Time for some Wednesday fast break bets presented by Parlay Play. I'm Gino here with Erik from ETOF 21 Sports to talk about game one of the Western Conference Finals. Erik, we have a new blood in the Final Four this year. Boston with this group, they've been there in the the Conference Finals for the last few years, but the Pacers, new team, the Timberwolves, new team here, the Luka with Kyrie, and this grouping, new squad getting this far. Mavs were in the conference finals a few years ago, then didn't even make the playoffs last year, and then come back here with the conference final run. So with players getting injured, teams getting a little older, I sent you a post that I thought was kind of fascinating. I think there was one of the top 15 paid players in the league that made the Final Four this year.
Yeah, it's been an interesting year. It kind of makes you think what would happen if injuries, but unfortunately injuries are part of the game. What would happen if Bucks were full strength and Knicks were full strength? How would that play out?
Because Boston, we're watching with them, Boston during the regular season was very, very good. And they had like all-time splits, all-time rating metrics. Like they were one of the best teams all time as far as regular season is concerned. In the playoffs, they haven't been that good. And this has been the same thing with them in previous years where they get tight. The way they play changes a little. They become a little more ISO. They don't move the ball as much. And when you rely so much on shooting threes, Erik, you're going to have some nights where the ball's just not going down. And in the playoffs, everybody plays a little bit better on defense. They've won 9 of their 11 games they played so far. I honestly think that if they were in the West, they would not have won more than 4 games. Playing against almost any of the teams in the West, any of them. Even teams like Phoenix and the Lakers who got ousted in the first round, they were playing much better and higher levels than anything Boston has played really themselves or had to deal with. I mean, they caught a roster of Miami. Erik, if Miami was playing without Rozier and Butler all year, that's not even a playoff roster. Like if the Cavs are playing without Donovan Mitchell and Jared Allen all year, that's not even a playoff roster. They played 8 games against teams that probably wouldn't even have been playoff teams.
Yeah, and I mean, you can say the same thing. Like if you take who was healthy when the Pacers played and put like the best player from the Bucks and the
Knicks. Or both the Bucks and the Knicks. The Pacers had to struggle through both of those teams who were massively banged up just to get there. And then these two teams meet and they play each other in a game where Boston is a 10-point home favorite and needs a Pacer meltdown late to go to overtime and win.
I mean, like for me, I was texting, with my buddy, used to coach in the league, and this scout, and at the 4:45 mark, we were texting in the first half. This is before my show started last on Tuesday nights. And the comment both of them said is Boston has the chance to step on their throat right now. How they close the half is going to determine how close this game actually is. They were up 55-47 at that point with 4:45 left in the second half. And that's the thing with Boston. They just don't have the step on your throat, I'm going to finish you.
And what do you think that is, honestly? Is it a combination of like coaching and then leadership, right? You've kind of pointed out the no smart, right?
They don't really have that in-your-face coach, and Tatum and Brown aren't really that intense. We've seen the clip going around on X with Ant getting in everyone's face as a second, third-year player saying, we got to keep up. We can't let up here. And keeping everyone engaged. Brown and Tatum just don't do that. Holiday's not that type of guy either. They just don't have that vocal guy who's one of their top.
Porzingis isn't that kind of a guy, right?
They don't have that guy that's going to hold everyone responsible, and their coach isn't that guy either. I mean, Halliburton at that point of the game, he had 3 points. He was struggling offensively, and they allowed him to score 8 points in that last
couple minutes.
4 minutes, 45 seconds. And when you're playing with someone as talented as a scorer that Halliburton is,
you don't let them get going.
You go in, it's just going to be all confidence. I really feel like, there is some shit at the end of the game, excuse my language, but if Boston would have closed that first half better, that situation,
They wouldn't even have been there.
they wouldn't even have been there.
And that's what's hard about watching them too, is just you just don't like you always feel like they'll bounce back, and they usually play poorly and then bounce back and have a great game, but they just don't play consistently well enough at a high enough level. And it's, I think watching them, it's so hard to get a feel for who they really are, because they haven't really been challenged by, you know, Bill. It's funny, Bill Simmons, who's a huge Boston fan, he was doing a segment the other day about like worst teams to make the conference finals, and they were talking about the Pacers as one of those teams, you know, and they were going through that, like they ended up saying they weren't one of the worst teams, but when you go through like where this team was or how proven they are, and you compare them to some of the teams through the years that may have kind of gotten a little lucky along the way, it's not as if the Pacers are not like a team with some talent, but they don't play any defense at all. And they, like you said, they needed a lot of help along the way also. So both of these teams getting here, it's just kind of like survival of the fittest, right? Like at this point, it's these are the healthiest teams.
The thing that stood out for me for Boston at the end of the end of regulation, if you watch Holiday, he's looking to the right side the whole time. As much as everyone wants to say something was designed for Tatum, that play design was designed for Brown to take the last shot, not Jason Tatum, which I found, I mean, Brown made it. It was a hell of a shot, but I just found it interesting that everyone has this conversation about Tatum belonging at the big boys table, whatever term you want to leave, whatever term you want to have. But in that situation, Megzula or whatever his name is, ran the play for Brown and not him.
I've always thought, I mean, right now, Tatum to me is just, he's right below that. He's right below that first group or so. He's in that like around 10, like, you know, in the next group, the 6 to 10, you know, however long you want to extend that next group of guys. Erik, let's talk about tonight's game as the Western Conference Finals kicks off or tips off. We're not talking about soccer here. We have the Wolves hosting the Mavs. Wolves, what a crazy game 7 that was, huh? Just flips. They're down 15 at half. They can't get much going. Ant is really, really struggling. Murray and Jokic are kind of having their way all at the first half. And then, boom, it just flips. Denver, all of a sudden, Minnesota turns up the pressure. Ant starts really locking down Murray in the second half. Murray's not getting a whole lot. And a lot of the Jokic shots, those crazy shots that he's hit from the last few years, it's like a lot of them went the other way. I think he was 0 of 7 for 3 to start the game. So some of those crazy Jokic shots just weren't quite bouncing that way. And Minnesota, pretty big upset as far as where we were sitting at the beginning of the playoffs, where it looked like Denver was kind of head and shoulders above everyone else. But now they got to come and bounce back here, Erik. What I'm interested in is young team, played really well. You just go from being up 2-0 in a series where everybody's talking about you like you're going to crush Denver. Then Denver comes all the way back and they have you on the ropes and you look like you're done. And then you come back and win a few games. They've gone on an emotional roller coaster over the last week and a half, and they still got 2 rounds to go. That's the only thing that makes me a little bit nervous about this first game for Minnesota. I think after this game, once they settle in a little bit, I feel like they're the most talented and the most kind of versatile team left. But they were built to beat Denver, and this Dallas team is a totally different style of matchup, right, Erik?
Oh, completely different style with how they want to play and what they look to do offensively.
So how are you looking to get involved in this thing tonight?
Well, you know, it's the same angle that I mentioned yesterday. You know, I'm playing the short rest angle. I took the Mavericks plus 4.5, plus 155.
Yeah.
Teams coming off game 7, 34% ATS, 32% straight up. Home favorites after game 7 and game 1, 38%. When we shrink it even more to just conference finals, 29%. When I look at this, like, honestly, who's guarding Luka? I know Jaden McDaniels is the next big thing.
Well,
Like,
that's funny.
Frail. He's like really, really frail. Go ahead.
And what you're just saying is what is my only play for tonight is under McDaniels' points. Because I think if he is the one they have to put on Luka early, I think that gets him in foul trouble, or that is all they're going to be able to get from him. Because he guarded Porter Jr., and Porter Jr. is way different than Luka. Porter Jr. is running around screens, like he's bigger, he's a shooter, but he's not going to be dicing, like probing you over and over, controlling the ball every moment like Luka. That's just a way different style. So even if McDaniels has a little bit of success, what I'm thinking, Eric, is that he's not going to be able to score at all. And McDaniels' props for scoring have gone up a little bit because his last 2 games, he shot 8 of 10, 3 of 5 from 3 for 21 points. He shot 7 of 10, 3 of 4 from 3 for 23 points. Prior to that, he had 5 games in a row where he didn't have any more than 11 points. So those 2 games are a little bit of an outlier where he hits 20 and he just shoots lights out. And now in this game, in this series, if they're going to try to put him on Luka, and that's going to take a lot of energy away from him, I went McDaniels under 10.5 points as my only play for tonight because I want to watch this game, kind of get a feel for it, and then kind of play off of what I see happen with some of these matchups. So my lone play is McDaniels. You went with Dallas. Tell us one more time how you played Dallas the first half.
I played a money line 4.5 and plus 450.
Okay.
Because when you think about it, Alexander's smaller than Williams. So, and you don't really want Edwards to guard him. So
no, he'll probably be on Kyrie, right? You put him on Kyrie.
Who's going to guard him? I mean,
I agree. It's kind of a weird one because you're not putting a big. It's not Cat. It's not Gobert. It's not Reed. It's not one of those 3 guys.
So the interesting person is it Kyle Anderson?
Does he get back in the mix here?
Yeah. So, I mean, but I don't really have the balls right now to play his over points, rebounds, and assists at 5.5. So I'm just going to take Dallas plus the 4.5 plus the 155 on the money line. You mentioned it, like the offensive stuff. What Dallas likes to do is I like to do a high pick and roll with a dribble then kick. That's the one weakness of the Minnesota defense. They have 2 guys that you can put in the pick and roll, dribble, get to the rim, and kind of kick it to the open shooter. And that's kind of how you can beat Minnesota. You have the 2 Briggs and Lively and Gafford that can match up with Towns, Gobert, and Reed. And Jones did pretty good on Alexander so I think Jones is going to be able to disrupt Ann a little bit. Just how
which of the bigs for the Mavs would you think this will be like a good series for? Because they can throw a few different bigs at you, right? Like we saw last series, Washington went nuts. They could get you Gafford. They could get you Lively. Who do you think will be like the most impactful in here of those bigs?
Probably Lively.
I think so too.
And then also just another thing to remember, if you're doing what I'm doing and you're betting Dallas, you definitely want to bet them to win the series.
Yeah, because they'll be up 1-0 and then they go and they'll have home court back, right? Stealing home court back right away if they win this game.
Teams that win game 1 of the conference finals with home court are 76-17 in the series.
And this might be a year, like we said, where the roads of these teams matter, right? Yeah. It might be a year where, hey, the Wolves have already had to go through a lot on the way. Even though they handled the Suns early, like that was still a tough team to go through and a different look. And you beat some star veterans. And then you had to deal with the Nuggets. And you kind of compare that to what the Mavs did. I'm not saying the Clippers or Oklahoma City were not good teams, but the Clippers were really banged up. And then Oklahoma City was a very young team that we saw some of their major weaknesses, right? What's interesting here is kind of on the flip side, Dallas is going to play a team that's a lot bigger and a lot better of a rebounding team than they've played so far, right? So it will be one of those fascinating things, Eric. And like, I think this will be a good series in that we have 2 very different styles of teams. I could see them doing the punch, counter punch, punch, counterpunch, right? Making some adjustments, other team having to make adjustments. We might see Minnesota have to go a little smaller in this series,
Yeah, how is Minnesota going to play it? And it's important to remember, like, when you look at the Dallas Thunder were the best 3-point shooting team in the NBA, 39%. They shot 32
right
in that series.
And that's the difference between
PJ
two
Walker,
games winning and losing, right?
PJ Walker is a career 29% from the corner 3-point shooter. He shot 68. You know what I mean? Like, obviously there's some shot variant stuff that could completely go the Mavericks' way, completely go against them. But in this situation, for me, I got to play the trend here. You know what I mean? Like, in how I watched the game last night, if Boston could have finished the first half better, I think they would have won that game easily. They didn't. Yep. Pacers hung around. Kudos to them. I think in this situation, with the experience that Luka has, Kyrie has, they're going to be able to sneak this one out. And as much as no one wants to admit it, Jason Kidd could be the best defensive game schemer in the NBA coach-wise. So I like the Mavs here.
Eric, we will be back to talk about Thursday, game 2, Boston and Pacers, man. That's a tough one. If you're a Pacer fan or a Pacer bettor, like money line, because when you're a 10-point underdog like that on the road, you need to steal games like that if you want to flip the series and have like a legitimate shot as a real big underdog. And so I know it was just one game, and Indy could come right back and win, or even if they don't and they win their 2 games at home, it's still fine. But didn't that feel like one of those that just is a heartbreaker?
It's amazing when you watch these guys play and think about how much money they make and how they make simple basketball mistakes.
Can't get in the ball in bounds twice in a row.
Well, just the simple stuff like, why aren't you going to the basketball? Like,
go to the ball.
Carlisle explained to me,
call a timeout at the end. He said, why isn't he calling the timeout to advance the ball?
Even if that happens, why aren't you running zone to take away the corner threes and the wing threes?
He's too good of a coach for that.
At that point, who cares if they get a flipping 2? A 2 does absolutely nothing.
There's not enough time.
Running a high zone, have everyone outside the paint.
Everyone, just layup drill. You stand there and you funnel them to the layup line.
Yeah. Siakam not going back to the ball when they're trying to inbound the ball. Halliburton dribbling the ball off his foot. At that.
Like you said, Siakam going under the screen instead of around, because, like you're saying, he wants to come around and push him but in front of the 3-point line. So if he's in a corner there, he should have been right on him, literally in the corner. It was just a unbelievable series of events down the stretch for the Pacers. Can they bounce back? Eric and I will talk all about that tomorrow. We'll give you our best bets on Thursday on Fast Break Bets. Don't forget about ParlayPlay.io. That's the place to go if you're looking for some action each and every day. You can put a couple props together when you parlay them. I only had one today, Eric. So for you, did you put together a parlay play? I guess the folks could put together ours if they want. They could put my prop and your prop, the two of them together.
Play Luka. I would say play Luka over.
Yeah,
that's what I would do.
I think so too.
Over, and I play the Jaden McDaniels under.
Yeah, because it might take a game or two for them to figure out how they're going to play Luka, like you're saying, and then it might just be a series that they don't really have the matchup. They may have to have a few guys focus in on him, figure something out with Gobert trying to kind of shadow him a little bit. Obviously you're not going to have him defending him, but kind of really zone defending him, keeping an eye on him from out. Wonder what they throw at the Mavs. We'll talk about how game 1 plays out tomorrow on Fast Break Bets. Thanks so much, everyone, for hanging out with us, and we'll see you again on Thursday.